Is accounting right for me? This is a question you might be asking yourself if you're at the beginning of your college education or if you are mid-career and planning to make a switch. And in this episode, I want to give you a more of a data-driven approach or an organized approach in deciding between two different career paths. As you know, I've been in the accounting game for the last 15 years, and I started out at PwC as an auditor, and then I worked my way into a staff accountant. After PwC, a staff accountant, senior manager, and then finally a financial controller. And I want to give you my thought process into deciding on the career path that I chose in accounting 15 years ago. And in this case, I was deciding between accounting and teaching. And so if we are going through this, the way I want to go through it is going through the least important attributes down to the most important. And so we'll be going through attributes such as creativity, how much creativity is involved in that profession, and then score accounting and score teaching, and then we'll go through each of the attributes, and then at the end we'll add them all up and see which one will have a higher score. This is not going to be the only deciding factor. It's more complicated than that. You'll have to go with your gut. You'll have to go with other factors that you're thinking, but this at least will give you a starting point in deciding between two different career choices. So we'll be going through creativity, cost of education, can you turn it into a business? This was very important for me, whether or not this career choice can be turned into a business in the future, job availability in my area, future outlook, stress level, my personality, which is very important for me to choose a career path that suits my personality. And then money will come toward the end because money obviously is very important. And then at the very end is job satisfaction because that is the most important aspect for me. And so everything we will be discussing is based on my own opinion. Of course, this will vary from person to person, but this will give you a starting point in deciding between a couple of different options. And so without further ado, let's dive right in. Now, starting out with creativity, when I'm choosing between accounting and teaching, I'm gonna score accounting as 5 and teaching is 8. And obviously the scoring goes from 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. I'm gonna score accounting at 5 because I think that the level of creativity is less in accounting than teaching. When it comes to accounting is mostly rule-based. And so you're following a bunch of rules, mostly US GAAP or generally accepted accounting principles. And so the amount of creativity is lower because you're following rules. You may be creative in the way that you do your calculations and your compliance steps, but at the end of the day, you're following rules. With teaching, I'm going to score it at 8 because teaching involves higher creativity levels in terms of presentation on how you present your material to the students. And I think scoring 5 for accounting and 8 for teaching is very fair with creativity. The next attribute we'll look at is the cost of education. Now, the average cost in the United States for accounting education for a 4-year college degree is $35,000 compared to $31,000 for a teacher. So it's very, very similar, $35K compared to $31K. So I'm gonna score accounting as 8, which is favorable, and also teaching also at 8. Favorable score here compared to, obviously, if we're talking about like medicine or engineering or any other career path, that will get like a low score because it's a very high education cost. And now moving on to the next attribute, which is, can you turn it into a business? Now, this was for me very important because going into accounting, and this is a story from my first year of college when I attended an accounting 101 class, and the professor at the time made me like accounting because of the way he talked about it and because he talked about his side business. So he had the college gig, so he was teaching in college, and he also had his own CPA practice. And his name was Professor Dauber. If he ever watches this episode, thank you so much. I owe you a great debt of gratitude in making me like accounting and enjoying the career in accounting for the last 15 years. And so, can we turn it into a business? This was very important for me. It was clear to me that I could in accounting, so I'm going to score it at 10, and I'm going to score teaching at 5. The reason why I'm not scoring teaching at lower than 5 is because you could, in theory, turn teaching into a business. You could have an online education or a website, potentially can be turned into a business, but it's much easier to turn accounting into a business and starting out an accounting practice. So 10 versus 5 for this attribute. Now going to the next item on my list, which is the job availability in my area. Now I'm scoring accounting as 10 and teaching a 7 because of the area that I'm in. So this is something that you have to decide for yourself based on your own geographic area, how much availability is there for accounting jobs. And in my case, I'm in New York City, and the availability is just very high, and the demand is very high for accounting professionals. And so I'm going to give it a 10. In terms of teaching, from what I know about teaching, in order for a job to become available at a public school, someone needs to retire or move out of that position. However, for accounting, for jobs to be created, this is based on economic activity and expansion of companies. And so as long as the economy is moving forward, the job availability will be there. And that has been the case definitely for the last 15 years. Even with the slump of 2009, it has been a high demand for accountants because of all the compliance need. It has been high in demand. And the next one we'll look at is future outlook. Now for future outlook, I'm going to give accounting an 8, which is a high score, and I'm going to give teaching a 6. The reason why I'm giving teaching less of a score here is because there has been a move in the last couple of years to online education. And definitely what we're seeing now with the current pandemic and people staying at home is that you're seeing a lot of online education just taking off. And I think that's going to become a trend for the future, where it's going to be one teacher teaching many more students through an online platform than the traditional teaching, which is one teacher standing in the classroom teaching, say between 20 to 30 students. So I think the future is moving more toward online education. This is my own subjective opinion. You may differ with me on this one, but I think I'm going to give accounting a score of 8 because even with automation for accounting, I think that the future is very bright because accounting requires someone to be behind the wheel driving the automation and looking at the compliance steps. There's always going to be demand for accountants, and I think it's an 8. It's not a perfect 10 because of the effect of automation, but I think it's higher than teaching, so 8 versus 6 for this one. The next attribute I'm going to look at is the stress level. Now this one, I'm going to score accounting way lower than teaching. This is obvious. With accounting, there's a bunch of deadlines. You're always chasing, after the next deadline, and there's a lot of late hours working, sometimes weekends, to try to complete the work. And so that comes from the fact that in accounting, you're mostly working for a private entity. This is the case for me and for many of the accountants that I know. And when you're working for a private company or a private entity or even a public company, there is always a level of stress because you're trying to meet the performance that is expected by the investors. And so that's why there's always this high stress versus a teacher who's working for an entity that belongs to the state or the government most of the time, and the stress level is lower. It's more of a laid-back position compared to accounting, so I'm going to score it 3 for accounting and 8 for teaching. Now the next attribute here is my own personality, and when I thought about this one, I thought about in terms of being an introvert, and I've spoken about this in my other video on the differences between accounting and finance as a career. I'm going to leave a link to that down in the description below. There is a difference between being an introvert and an extrovert. In this case, my personality is more geared toward being an introvert. And in accounting, I knew that the level of interaction with people is going to be limited to a group, which is a team that I work with most of the time, versus with teaching, you would need to interact with many more people. For example, you would have to be dealing with the parents of your students and a bunch of faculty staff. So it was more suited for me to be in accounting in that case, and that's why I'm going to score accounting as an 8 and teaching as a 6. And moving on to the next attribute here, which is going to be money. So money, I'm going to give accounting a 9 and teaching a 5. And this is obvious because for entry-level accountant, the average salary is $59,000 in my area here in New York City, while the average salary for a teacher is $57,000. So 59 versus 57 is very close, I know, but when you go to mid-career salary, average salary for an accountant is $140K. Versus a teacher is only $90K. And if you go to higher levels in accounting, more than mid-career, you'll be looking at $200K, $300K and beyond for positions such as senior controller and CFO. With a teacher, the salary isn't going to grow that much beyond the 100K mark. So money is obviously important. It isn't everything. That's why we're discussing all the other attributes as well. But money is very important for me, at least, because I knew the more money that I'm gonna make, the more I'm gonna save, and the faster I'm gonna reach my financial independence, which is very important for me. And so I'm scoring accounting as 9 and teaching as a 5 in this case. Now, for the final attribute that I considered in choosing between accounting and teaching, the attribute is job satisfaction. Now, this one I left till the end because for me, this is the most important attribute. If you're not happy with what you're doing, ultimately, even if everything else checks out, this one is not going to work out. So you need to be sure that the job or the career path you're choosing has a higher level of job satisfaction. In this case, I'm scoring accounting as 5, which is not great, and teaching as 9. The reason why I'm giving teaching a 9 is that, as you may imagine, teaching involves helping students, and a lot of the job satisfaction comes from helping others. At least this is how I see it. When you help other people, this is the highest satisfaction levels. With accounting, you aren't necessarily helping other people. You might be helping management and helping investors understand the performance of the business. You may be helping in other ways, but it's not the same satisfaction as teaching. So I'm giving it a 5 for accounting and a 9 for teaching. So even though job satisfaction is the most important attribute and I left it toward the end, and I gave accounting a lower score than teaching, at the end of the day, the reason why I did the analysis is that so I can add up all of the score for accounting for all of the 9 attributes, and then I add up the score for teaching for the same attributes, and I then comparing apples to apples, and I'm looking at a score for accounting. When you add everything up, I get 66, and with teaching, I get 62. Now, in this case, the reason why I did the analysis this way, even though I had a gut feeling that I wanted to choose accounting, I wanted to have another reference point. So this analysis at least give me the confirmation that the gut feeling that I had that I wanted to choose accounting is correct. Now, if the opposite was true, if I got a higher score from teaching, that will make me rethink my position into going into accounting back then. But what happened is that I got a higher score from accounting, and that confirmed my idea that I'm going into accounting over teaching. And this is how I made my decision to go into accounting. Now, I encourage you to do the same comparison for yourself if you're choosing between 2 different career paths or even 2 companies within the same career path. If you're choosing between 2 things, you could make the same analysis based on the attributes that matter to you. So you may be borrowing some of the ideas that I presented here in terms of what attributes to look at, but also you may have some other attributes that you may care about, such as maybe title. If you care more about title than anything else, you can have the scoring system help you with that as well. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something new, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And you may want to share this in your network because I'm sure someone that you know will benefit from this analysis, and I'll see you in the next video.